If you wish to be a Michelin-starred chef, get one thing straight first. The kitchen was never meant to be kind. Your journey starts at 15, scrubbing dishes in the back of a diner managed by your uncle. Your hands are raw, cracked, and burned from water, far too hot for most people to endure. Then comes that night. The line cook doesn't show up, and the desperate owner points right at you. Suddenly, you're expected to plate a dessert, one you've watched being made 100 times, but never actually touched. Your hands are shaking so violently that the sauce lands completely crooked. Nobody applauds, nobody even notices. Yet in that exact moment, something inside you permanently locks into place. It isn't about fame or recognition. It's about the raw, undivided focus it takes to craft just one small thing perfectly under absolute pressure. You spend the next few years grinding through every station nobody else wants. It's 5 in the morning in the walk-in freezer, breaking down cardboard boxes until your fingers lose all feeling. It's the dish pit on a Saturday night, drowning under a mountain of tickets while the smell of bleach and scorched butter sticks to your skin. It follows you home so heavily that your family smells your shift before you even open your mouth. Because by then, you've already internalized the first real rule of a professional kitchen. Nobody simply hands you a chef's knife. You earn the right to carry one by proving you can endure the brutal work underneath it without uttering a single complaint. Against your family's quiet doubts, you enroll in culinary school, only to realize within the very first month that talent means almost nothing here. Repetition is everything. The students who actually make it aren't the ones born with a refined palate. They're the ones willing to dice the exact same onion 400 times over and over until every single motion becomes second nature. Most nights you walk home with bleeding knuckles, a painful reminder from a blade that still refuses to fully obey you. You graduate and land an unpaid trial shift, a stage, at a serious restaurant. Right away, you find yourself at the very bottom of a brutal hierarchy, governed by a century-old military system. For 3 full weeks, the chef de cuisine doesn't even bother to learn your name. In that kitchen, you aren't a person yet. You are simply a pair of hands that either keeps up or gets replaced by the next hopeful waiting at the back door. You quickly realize that even the senior cooks only speak when spoken to. It isn't just fear, it's an unspoken agreement. On a live line, there is zero room for conversation that doesn't directly serve the ticket in front of you. You get snapped at for a garnish placed just 1 centimeter off center. You get called out for plating 4 seconds late during a chaotic rush where 40 tickets are printing all at once. You learn to take every hit without flinching, not because the criticism is delivered with kindness, but because walking out means giving up your spot to someone else waiting to take it. Slowly, over the months, the sharp corrections start coming less often. It isn't because you've reached perfection. It's because you've finally become fast enough and clean enough that there's simply less left to correct. You climb the ranks, station by station. First comes garde-manger, the cold station. Here, you master absolute precision before anyone even thinks about trusting you with heat. Then comes sauce, the ultimate test of a cook's palate. On this line, a single broken sauce under pressure can destroy 40 plates in a row, and every single person in that room will know exactly who failed. In your first 2 years, you burn yourself so many times that new burns simply overlap old scars. Your forearms become a permanent record of every single split second your focus slipped. You work 6 days a week, 12 to 15 hours a day, always on your feet, wearing through 2 pairs of shoes a year. You watch friends outside the industry build normal lives, actual weekends, real holidays, birthdays that don't take place on a Tuesday afternoon between prep and dinner service. You tell yourself this sacrifice has a limit, though deep down, you aren't so sure. Every 18 months, you move to a new restaurant. It's not disloyalty, it's expectation. Every new kitchen exposes you to a different chef's discipline, a new cuisine's logic, and an even higher standard of precision. Because the chefs who actually reach the top aren't the ones who stayed comfortable in one place. They are the ones who actively sought out the environments that would break their bad habits and rebuild them better. You land a stage under a chef who already holds 2 stars, and for the first time you see a kitchen run not on fear, but on an almost unbearable standard of consistency. Every single dish leaving the pass is an exact duplicate of the last. The chef has engineered a system so precise that personal mood or exhaustion simply cannot bleed into the food, or watching him taste a sauce for the 40th time that night with the exact same intense focus as the first, you realize the truth. This is the real difference between competence and greatness. It's not about sudden inspiration. It's a monastic refusal to ever let your standards slip. In your late 20s, you get promoted to sous chef, and the job changes completely. You're no longer just executing dishes. Now, you're managing a dozen cooks who are just as exhausted and just as hungry to prove themselves as you were a few years ago. You quickly realize that enforcing discipline without cruelty is infinitely harder than just shouting. Correcting a young cook's technique to make them better, rather than afraid, requires a level of patience this industry rarely teaches and almost never rewards. One night during closing, you stand over a 19-year-old station and see her hands shaking exactly the way yours used to. In that moment, you make a conscious choice. Instead of snatching the knife away and doing it yourself, you show her the cut a second time. Because years ago, you made a promise to yourself that if you ever ran a kitchen, you would build cooks up, not just extract labor from them. Your personal life shrinks to almost nothing. Relationships end quietly, fading away, because no one can build a life around someone who never gets home before midnight and is never free when the rest of the world has a weekend. In your loneliest moments, you tell yourself the restaurant is your relationship, demanding, consuming, and all-encompassing. Then, in your early 30s, it happens. You're given your own kitchen, a small restaurant with your name on the menu for the very first time. But the terror of that first week is unlike anything you've ever felt before. There is no chef above you to catch a mistake before it hits the table. Every single decision, every ingredient sourced, every dish seasoned, every person hired now leads straight back to you, and you alone. For the first time, you aren't just executing someone else's vision. You're building a menu around your own point of view. You spend months developing dishes in near total isolation long after service ends. You cook the exact same plate 30 or 40 times in a row, adjusting a single ingredient just 1 gram at a time. Because you've learned the ultimate truth, the gap between a good dish and a transcendent one is almost never a dramatic leap. It's a tiny, obsessive tweak, repeated with relentless patience until the dish settles into a version of itself that simply cannot be improved any further. You endure years of paper-thin margins. You face terrifying nights where the dining room sits half empty, doing payroll math in your head while plating food for the 4 guests who actually showed up. A restaurant with real ambition rarely turns a profit in its early days, and more than once you consider shutting the doors, walking away to work for someone else's dream, instead of slowly bankrupting yourself chasing your own. You hear it secondhand, a quiet whisper through a supplier or a regular guest. An inspector might have dined in your restaurant, but in this industry, nobody ever knows for sure. The evaluators who award Michelin stars operate in total secrecy. They pay for their own meals, leave no warning, and blend seamlessly into the crowd, which means for years, every single service must be executed with absolute perfection, as if you're being judged every night. Because you very well might be. Without ever mentioning it to your staff, you develop a silent habit. During the peak of a busy service, you scan the dining room, studying a solo guest, taking notes on their phone just a bit too carefully, or a couple ordering with unusual precision. And every single night, for years, you wonder, is tonight the night that quietly decides our entire future? The night before the new guide drops, you don't sleep at all. You spend hours constantly refreshing a web page, the modern version of standing by a mailbox, waiting for exam results. And when your restaurant's name finally appears with a single star beside it, you don't celebrate the way you imagined you would as a 15-year-old dishwasher. Instead, you stand alone in your empty kitchen before anyone else arrives, hit by a wave of relief so overwhelming it feels almost like grief. Because in that quiet room, the truth hits you. A star doesn't end the pressure. It multiplies it. From this moment on, every guest who walks through your door arrives with expectations that didn't exist yesterday. The standard you have to maintain is no longer just your private ambition. It's a public promise you have to keep every single service, for as long as your name remains on that page. With a star above your door, your kitchen grows even more demanding. You're now cooking for world-class critics, traveling food writers, and wealthy diners who crossed oceans just to eat your food tonight. But right beside them, sits a couple who saved up for an entire year to celebrate an anniversary in the room you built. You realize you owe both of them the exact same unwavering focus. The professionals expecting perfection and the ordinary people giving you money they couldn't easily spare for a meal they'll remember forever. You lose your temper far less than you did as a young cook, not because the pressure is gone, but because you learned a vital lesson. A kitchen run on fear creates cooks who hide their mistakes, and a hidden mistake reaches a guest's table. You'd rather build a team that trusts you enough to say, chef, the sauce broke, than one too terrified to speak until it's too late. You chase a second star for years, pushing standards higher and higher. You reject suppliers, send back dishes a dozen times during prep, and train your palate to catch microscopic flaws most guests will never notice, but will certainly feel. And when that second star finally arrives, it costs you just as much sleep as the first. The joy comes mixed with a heavy, exhausting realization. The mountain only gets steeper from here. That star in the guide feels like the proudest achievement of your life, and at the exact same time, the opening line of an even harder chapter you have yet to write. You mentor a new generation of young cooks, watching them burn their forearms and doubt themselves during their first real rush. In their exhaustion, you see a ghost of yourself from 15 years ago, and you realize unexpectedly that teaching someone else to hold a knife properly brings a deep satisfaction that no single plate you ever cooked could ever match. One slow Tuesday afternoon, a young dishwasher asks you a question that stops you in your tracks. Was it worth it? All of it? You pause longer than they expect. You think of every relationship that faded into silence, every holiday spent behind a boiling hotline instead of with the people who loved you, every sleepless night spent fearing a single bad review could erase years of work. And then you tell them the truth. You tell them you wouldn't change a single thing, not because